Talking about Trump's cabinet nominees, the national security space, both Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard are receiving the full demonization from the left, as you would expect. And DOJ has a national security role too. So of course Matt Gaetz. We'll get to them all. But the one thing we didn't talk about earlier, when we were talking about his nominees, specific to Pete Hegseth for DOD, was this story that came out about a settlement for a civil sexual harassment claim that Hegseth entered into back in 2017, paying an undisclosed amount to a woman who accused him of sexual assault, an encounter which he maintains was consensual. His lawyer saying basically he was totally innocent. He did nothing wrong. We went through mediation and ultimately settled for far less than what she wanted, and that should have completely buried it. Well, nothing stays buried when you're a nominee for Secretary of Defense or any other cabinet post for that matter.
Yeah, the accuser's identity has been kept confidential. And according to Pete's attorney, she was the aggressor and she went to police days after the incident happened.
The event occurred at a California Federation of Republican Women conference, staying at this hotel. He gives a speech. He had way too many drinks, and according to the video surveillance and eyewitness testimony, this woman who was sober took advantage of him, and she was the aggressor. She took him by the arm and led him to his room, and so on and so forth. But so this he said, she said incident, and the lawyer, Hegseth's lawyer, also said, this was during the height of the Me Too movement, and so he knew if the allegation became public, he would get bounced from Fox, so he chose the path of least resistance, and that was the explanation for not fighting the claim.
And I'm sure she knew that, too. That's why she did it. Conjecture on my part, but women can be evil. This just in.
You don't have to persuade me.
Tell me, sister.
On more substantive matters, that relate to the actual functioning of these national security agencies. Susan Crabtree over at RealClearPolitics.com has more great reporting on the Secret Service. Secret Service is investigating an agent who has been accused of having Antifa and anarchist ties, who allegedly lashed out at Trump as someone with, quote, Nazi-ass policies, unquote, and called his supporters, quote, chodes and, quote, neo-Nazis in several social media posts, which, of course, have now been deleted. But this guy has
deleted.
This guy has been identified. His duties have been modified, we're told by the Secret Service spokeshuman, Anthony Guglielmi. And there's an investigation ongoing. Of course, his comments don't reflect the values of Secret Service and blah, blah, blah. But is it any wonder, with this going on at these sensitive agencies, that Trump is nominating blunt instruments to deal with changing the culture in these agencies that have been beset by basically leftist political operatives masquerading as Secret Service agents or FBI agents or DOJ prosecutors? Is it any wonder? For more on all this, we're pleased to be joined by Stephen Bucci. Stephen Bucci served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official. Now a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen, thanks for joining us as usual. Appreciate it.
It's always my pleasure to be on the show. Thank you for having me back again.
So what's your take on Hegseth?
Pete is a smart guy. He's a capable guy. The only thing, all his, his personal life stuff, look, we got a lot of people with messy personal lives in government serving well. If you disqualified everybody who had something that you thought was messy, nobody get to serve. But that aside, just looking at his qualifications, could he do the job of SecDef, the big, top of the heap, visionary kind of job? Yeah, I think he could. The only part that I think they're going to have to do is they're going to have to find him a good deputy secretary to help run the building, because that's where he's really going to run into the internal resistance. it's too big and complicated an organization to say, okay, everybody who disagrees with me or who gives me resistance, I'm going to fire. Sometimes the disagreement or the resistance is not rebellion. It's, hey, boss, you need to consider these other things. So if he can find a good, experienced person that isn't tainted in the way we're referring to here to be the deputy, I think he'll probably be in pretty good shape. Now, this personal stuff, we all knew that everybody that Trump nominated, unless he nominated some left-wing Democrat for something, which is not really going to happen, they were going to get this kind of resistance. If they can't resist on facts, they're going to resist on all these ad hominem attacks, and I think we're going to see more of it as we go through the nomination process.
Yeah, it's not disagreement. That's not the issue, right? It's derailment. It's that you have people in these agencies that are actively hostile to whatever decisions are made. And I mean, as you know, being a military man, I mean, you can have disagreements and you can have debates, and that's all well and good. But once the boss has made the decision, that's the direction we're going.
That's what's supposed to happen, not just in the military, by the way, but in the rest of the federal government.
Right.
That is kind of the rule. However, since 8 years of Obama, which has soaked all of the civil servants and everybody else in the direction Obama thought all this should go, both ideologically as well as factually. Then when Trump came in the first time, he did not understand the personnel system, and he thought as soon as he got in there, all those civil servants would say, okay, Obama's gone, Trump's in, let's salute Trump and do what he tells us to do. And that's not the way it happens. You have to get your politicals in there to help turn the ship of state in the new direction. He was never able to do that sufficiently. In a couple agencies he did, but that was not the norm. So you had essentially 4 years of these folks who had burrowed in under Obama far more than in any other case. Burrowing in is when federal politicals transfer over and become career civil servants, so they stay there even though their political boss is now gone. And that happened under Obama in much greater numbers than the norm. There's usually some, but this was over the top. They worked against Trump. The civil servants, even the career ones, never changed their allegiance. They stayed in place. And then you had Biden come in for another 4 years, which made it even worse. Now Trump is coming in, having to fight against what is essentially 16 years of people in place who think differently than he does, to the point of thinking resistance and disobedience is okay. And that's wrong. So it's going to be a tough fight. We all celebrated on the 6th of November, but man, that was just the starting bell. The fight is going to go on now. It's going to be tough. The Dems are desperate, so they're going to fight even harder and probably dirtier than they have before. And we just need to expect it and answer it effectively. You don't necessarily have to be as crappy as them, but you got to fight it effectively, and that means really pushing hard.
Well, the other thing, too, is, I mean, just on the Pentagon and the administration of the Department of Defense, I mean, the timing of this couldn't be any better, to speak to Trump's point. Pentagon fails 7th audit in a row, but hey, they say progress is being made. You failed 7 audits in a row. It would not happen in corporate America. They can't fully account for the $824 billion budget at the Pentagon. And so, all these guys that are resisting or that are spending all their time on, assessments of Pete Hegseth, why don't you run your show and inspire some confidence, both on the national security side, like the planning and execution of a withdrawal from Afghanistan, and also on the dollars and cents side, like you actually know how to manage a budget and run an agency.
Yeah, that especially when they're attacking Hegseth as not having the chops to do that.
Yeah, right.
It's like, well, you guys clearly don't either. So if you can't do it and you've been in there all this time, why is it a disqualifier that this new guy is coming in and you say he doesn't have that experience? Well, you guys should have had it by now, and you clearly don't. So that that's you're throwing rocks inside a glass building.
Well, with respect to both Hegseth and folding in Gates here, too, and Gates may fit this description even better than Hegseth, what about the idea that, look, if you want a blunt instrument to bring accountability to these sclerotic agencies that are going to be very resistant to change and have a lot of inertia in their direction, it's better to have somebody that comes in with no allies or virtually no allies. Other than you and your senior management people that you were talking about, the leadership team that you put together around the secretary, because you can't worry about your reputation. You can't worry about sort of this is a stepping stone to something else and do the job that it seems pretty clear Trump wants you to do. So having fewer allies, certainly within the layers of bureaucracy, the middle management of DOJ and the middle management of DOD, may be better.
That's possible, but boy, I tell you, it does get lonely when in those big organizations. You do need some help there.
No question.
Besides just a couple of people around you. So I hear what you're saying, and you're right. You're not, if you come in with the mandate from the president to, kick backsides and take names, you're not going to have a lot of friends because everybody's going to feel threatened, and they're going to think, well, wait a minute, this is the Vindman syndrome, right? The two brothers, now one of them's a darn congressman, that thought, well, look, we're lieutenant colonels, and we're the experts, so the president, if he doesn't listen to us, that's tout him out to an impeachable offense. What a bunch of crap. That's not the way it works, gentlemen. You are lower level minions. You can make recommendations, and the leadership, the decision makers evaluate it, and then they make the call. And if it's different, you are supposed to either salute and move out or pack up your bags and leave in resignation because you don't feel you can follow the order. But to stay in place and be an insurgent against the person that the American people has elected is unacceptable, should not be tolerated for even a day. And to do that, you got to have some pretty tough people in leadership running those departments. And that seems to be what President Trump is serving up.
Stephen Bucci, I wanted to ask you about Biden. We've learned over the weekend that he authorized Ukraine to use U.S. long-range missiles to strike inside Russia. Do you think that this is going to change the course of the war?
It will put a lot more pressure on Russia. Putin is going to be thumping his chest and saying, well, this means X, as he's done, frankly, since about the first week of the war, and it hasn't changed anything. So I'm not saying just dismiss Putin as a threat. He's got a lot of stuff. It will be dangerous, but we shouldn't clutch our pearls and swoon because Vladimir Putin says, well, if you do that, then I'm going to do this, because he hasn't backed up anything he said towards anybody else the entire war. So we'll see where it goes, but it will definitely add an element within Russia, putting a lot more pressure on Putin with his domestic constituencies.
What did you make of Zelensky sort of signaling that he expects that Trump will help bring a more expeditious end to this war? Was that Zelensky indicating he's willing to negotiate under certain conditions?
I think that is what it's saying. Whatever Trump said to him in their conversation gave him some level of comfort that Trump's not just going to, cut and run. He's going to bring an end to this thing. And I think he may have explained the truth to Mr. Zelensky that may involve them making some sacrifice.
I wanted to also get your take. We haven't paid as much attention to this, but it's important. and it factors into the relationship with Xi and the Chinese Communist Party. I'm talking about America's and Trump's. So this week, 45 democracy activists will be sentenced on charges of conspiring to commit subversion for trying to organize a primary election. And then the trial of former Apple Daily publisher Jimmy Lai resumes, who's this, for those who've forgotten, this sort of Solzhenitsyn-like dissident in China. This seems to me like an opportunity for Trump to really be, I think, the beacon of freedom internationally that he wants to be, to press Xi on the release of pro-democracy protesters and specifically Jimmy Lai.
Yeah, I think it is an opportunity to do that. Whenever we have a leadership transition like we're having right now in the United States, particularly one as stark as Biden to Trump, I think it's time to try and push some of those buttons, particularly with these dictators like Xi. Look, Xi knows Trump is going to come at this completely differently. He is not going to sit there, looking for an envelope to get handed to him or to some family member. He is going to be doing what he thinks is in America's interests, and that, I think, gets Xi's attention. Because if he doesn't, if Xi believes he doesn't think he can influence Trump in the way he's influenced the Biden administration, he's going to have to adjust his game plan. And I think that's already going on. It's going on in a lot of places. And hopefully will have some beneficial effect. I think it will, just as long as the idiots who are in office right now don't screw things up too much between now and January 20th, or put into place stuff that, will take us a year and a half of court cases before Trump can do what he really believes we should be doing. Because Trump's instincts are good on the international field. I mean, frankly, way better than all these folks that consider themselves experts.
And before we let you go, too, I did want to fold in Tulsi Gabbard because she's under renewed attack as a Russian/Syrian asset, something that even Bernie Sanders rejected when she was characterized that way in 2019 when she was running for president. But your reaction to that, based on what you know about Gabbard?
That's nonsense. She isn't anybody's agent. Look, I don't agree with everything Tulsi Gabbard pushes with regard to foreign policy, but there's no way she's a Russian agent any more than President Trump was a Russian agent, or any of the other former Trump people in the last administration that got tarred that way. That is a complete fabrication. It was proven to be a fabrication multiple times, and now they're just dragging it up again and applying it to Tulsi. Look, you don't have to agree with her, but she is not a Russian agent or anybody else's dupe. She just has very strongly held opinions that are not always mainstream. Get used to it. That's what, as they say, elections have consequences.
Stephen Bucci served America for 3 decades as Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official. Visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies now. Stephen, thanks as always.
It's my pleasure. Thanks, guys, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank. It's a bank where relationships still matter. Signature Bank knows your name and your story. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
I'm Jim Durkin, founding partner of the Martech Group, a global market research firm based in Chicago since 1985 and a longtime customer of Signature Bank. When our business moved to our current Loop location, I recall seeing Mick O'Rourke and his 2 business partners, Brian Duncan and Kevin Vestuga, laying the foundation for Signature Bank. When Signature opened its doors in 2006, I was proud to move our accounts there and become a shareholder. Being in the consulting business, the Martech Group has a keen understanding of the value of relationships, trust, and attentiveness. Whether dealing with our U.S. practice or our international operations, Signature Bank is always there when we need them. That's why the Martech Group is proud to have Signature Bank